Employers, does this sound like you? 75% of you are hesitating to hire young talent under age 30. Over the past decade, I have had the privilege and very much also the challenge of working with dozens of young people. And today I'm going to share my insights from my experiences to help you connect with the incredible gold mine of talent that Gen Z are. I'm Jennifer Dillon, CEO of Generation Bounce Back, and we create and share tools to help young people build personal resilience so they can reach their highest potential. I know that every situation is different, so this is just my perspective. I hope it's helpful. So here are some tips. Tip number 1, recognize the desire for healing and helping others is a superpower that this generation seems to have a lot of. They are shaping what could be a better world for us, and I give them a lot of credit for that perspective just as a baseline for our interactions. Let's begin with where young folks are coming from. You're a Gen Xer or you're a boomer. We grew up in a world where it was like your feelings, nobody cares about your feelings. Get back to work, right? We had bad childhoods too. We had lots of traumas as well. But for us, they were, personal traumas. This generation has personal traumas, just like we had, but the entire generation has gone through several shared traumas. COVID, the shock and unsafety of growing up in school shootings, years and years of political unrest and divisiveness, global conflicts that get streamed into their eyeballs, online bullying, all kinds of parasocial relationships, influencers beyond our, posters on our wall kind of influencing. These influencers are in their lives and selling them products. And then you take what happens to their brain. Social media and YouTube and video games have all become extremely good at figuring out ways to get us to stick onto that thing, to watch that screen. And they do it with brain manipulation. So the entire generation has been manipulated to look for things that are going to give them dopamine hits, feel good moments. That can come from a lot of things like accomplishing something in a game or watching someone else get hurt. All of that can be gamified. So you have on one hand trauma and you have on the other hand years and years of having their brain played with. The definition of trauma is a terrible event that overwhelms our capacity to cope or process with what happened in that moment. And what trauma requires then for us and our generation and younger ones is to build resilience, which is the opportunity to absorb and heal from and grow stronger in our perspectives over our lifetimes. However, that's not necessarily happening for today's young people. If you can see most of what their attitudes and their expressions of what is going on comes from some understanding that life is extremely unfair, can be very cruel, is imbalanced in lots of ways, and is very confusing. If you can put yourself in that perspective, it's going to be a lot easier to create those connections. So let me tell you what I hear a lot about these generations. So Gen Z is number 1, they're too sensitive. And I used to think that too, but I realized that it's not necessarily that they're too sensitive. It's that they're aware of how things can pain them because they've seen it. They've seen it in their own lives. And so they're more protective of themselves. And this also means that many of them, I would say most of them, are also highly empathetic, and they want to seek understanding and meaning, not just for themselves, but for other people. And when they believe in what they're doing, that they are helping themselves and others with their work ethic and enthusiasm can just explode. I mean, just go through the roof. It's so powerful. Another thing I often hear is that they lack confidence in themselves and the work that they do. So tip number 2 is recognize that they are not used to speaking with authority figures face to face. I've noticed young professionals often feel intimidated or distant from me as an authority figure. And when you think about the fact that there are a lot of online authority figures in their lives who they will never meet. I mean, everyone from their teacher, if they're doing distant learning, or even you, they might not automatically see a way to initiate that kind of dialogue that you're going to need. That's where deliberate relationship building systems can come into play. So I remember I introduced an open text policy with my team. I made it really clear, you can text me anytime. And I would text one-on-one or group text, just casual conversations about what was going on. Like, hey, everyone, don't forget our meetings at noon, bring a snack. Or just a reminder, tomorrow's a holiday or there's a deadline for this thing that needs to get done. And that made me and their immediate supervisors accessible. not only in real time, but just as real people. If we could just kind of have, okay, how you doing? Oh, did you get this done? I know that for a lot of people that may not work for every role, but for us, it created a real-time communication channel. Even if I or their immediate supervisor couldn't always reply immediately, knowing that the door was always open meant concerns were addressed as they came up. In a way, it's a modern twist on the open door policy. It sparked group discussions and one-on-one check-ins, and it built genuine relationships. Of course, we had to set some ground rules, but within those limits, the impact was profound. I often hear that Gen Z doesn't know how to build relationships at work. And given this generation has learned how to have remote relationships, even with members of their own family, I have a Gen Zer, we text a lot. So it shouldn't be surprising that face-to-face relationship building is going to need some help. I need that help too in new situations sometimes. There are some simple things that you can do that crack the ice on that. Have all staff meetings that aren't business. So spend time on relationship building, and everyone in your workplace is going to like this. All generations will appreciate it. So one thing we did too is we would kick off just meetings where, we might talk about work, but mostly it was about that relationship building. And we had one really great icebreaker or warmer, as we would call it, question, which was, tell us the story of your name. And in just a few minutes, just going around the room, we would learn so much about the individual, about their family backgrounds, their nicknames. Surprisingly, a lot of people change their names, or they have a preferred name that they wish you would call them. And it's just a simple exercise that humanizes everyone. The next thing I hear a lot about is a lack of concentration. It's a fact that this generation gets bored and distracted easily. Go back and watch about the dopamine. They have been manipulated to not be able to tolerate long periods of time of boredom. And so you can say that's a terrible thing, but that's not going to change the fact of how things are. So one of the things that we did that was very effective was we began a ritual of sorts of beginning all of our staff meetings with a mindfulness moment. So short, silent period where I or someone else would walk through a relaxation and focusing exercise. Yes, sometimes people would fall asleep. That happens very rarely, but it can. But it also required everyone to put away their phones, center themselves, and get ready for the day or the meeting. And this practice not only fostered self-care, but also sharpened focus and reduced distractions. I don't care what age you are, it works. It really helps everybody. So based on my experiences, here are some key insights to help you tap into the resilience and creativity of young professionals. First, communication. Create channels that resonate with them. Instead of doing a lot of top-down directives, try asking questions like, what are you working on and how might it affect your team? Whether through text, apps, or just having coffee together, spend some time to open a dialogue, and that will make a huge difference, not only in your communication and your bottom line, but it'll help them to come back to you when you need their feedback, which brings me to feedback and constructive problem solving. Many young employees may hold back until they get really frustrated. But if you set up a process where they can voice concerns and then suggest solutions to those concerns, you can turn complaints into opportunities for growth. They often see things that I do not see. And we have to remember that they are, for many of us, also our customers. They understand our customers better than we can. So connect what they are doing with larger, meaningful goals that they have. And that's going to really also help them to open up and talk about the things that they think need to change or things that they want to implement. If you want to build confidence, if your team seems intimidated by, traditional authority figures, develop clear supportive pathways for them to express their needs. You can start by anonymous tips, someplace where they can anonymously say, this is going on, I don't think it's right, or I want to change it. And that will start to nurture confidence if you bring up those anonymous things in a meeting, for example, where you might say, this is a good idea, but the reason we can't do this is X, Y, and Z. And that way they get a sense that, I actually am seeing things that are relevant and important. And then they start to build that confidence and an understanding of why things operate the way they do. Remember that the way that you talk to them can also destroy their confidence. This was a big one for me. I tend to be very straightforward when I speak. I don't understand why someone would be intimidated by me at all. I'm just being honest, right? But a lot of times I got a lot of feedback from their immediate supervisors or HR saying they don't feel comfortable telling you something because they feel like you criticize them. If they come and show you something and it's not right, then you're criticizing them. So I had to really work on how I delivered my feedback as feedback, not as criticism. And it's simple stuff like recognizing the good before you launch into this is what I would change. And that just blooms their confidence in themselves instead of feeling like you're crushing them all the time. Organization is huge. Yes, there is a lot of disorganization going on. And I'll explain why in a second, but what they really try to do is rely on digital tools. And I found that introducing suggestions to use old-fashioned traditional routines and tools was helpful for some. An alarm clock instead of relying on their phone. Bridge calendar where they could see things and they could write it out. And just the process of doing that would help them remember. Using colored folders, waking up and having a routine of planning daily habits. We have to remember that our brains continue to develop into our 20s. So the skills they learn now will last a lifetime. And you have to remember that you're working with brains that have not fully developed the kind of thinking patterns and routines that you may have developed over decades. At the end of the day, these young people bring empathy and creativity and a very strong work ethic. You would be shocked how hard they will work when they see the purpose in what they're doing. And when they feel part of the team and when they feel like they're seen and heard for the things that they do. And those are things that all of us should be doing for all of our employees. It just makes us better leaders. They have taught me more than I have taught them. And I know that they are our future. And there's no way that me sitting back saying, well, you guys better just figure it out and make a change because this is how things are, is ever going to work. And if you start by understanding that, you're going to get where they're coming from and you're going to recognize this beautiful gold mine of really wonderful people who are ready to work hard and be the best employees you can ever imagine.